Alright, so that's how we started. I'm bothering to bore people who've heard this before with another retelling, just because I want to set up what I aim to talk about today. Alright?
How many of those original plants do you still have?
Quite a few. I would say like 90% of our tropical holdings are still from that first donation.
Cool.
And it's pretty much the normal course of events that, one, you lose plants along the way. Hate to say it, but those of you who are just starting, you'll find out soon enough, right? You lose plants along the way. Sometimes it's because you make mistakes, right? You do the wrong thing at the wrong time or whatever, and you forget that your tropical can't be out when it's going to be a frosty night. Things happen. But then other things happen that you have no control over. And sometimes you don't even know why it happened. One day you're looking at your plant and you say, it doesn't look so good, and the next day it looks worse, and then the week after that it's dropping leaves, and the next thing you know, you're bringing it to the club and saying, whoa, what happened? And they look at it and say, well, you got yourself a new pot. So these kind of things happen for us too. And I couldn't say exactly how many of those remain, but a fair number of them do. The tropicals, plus a fair number of temperate plants. And guess what? After 25 years, they're really starting to look pretty good. By the time they came to us, a lot of them were in bad health. Actually, a lot of them died before they came to us. The woman couldn't let go of them. She loved them so well, even though she couldn't take care of them, she couldn't see them go. And so by the time they came to us, a lot of them were gone already, or badly damaged, or overgrown, and what have you. So that was the situation back then. 93 would be like the first year I was actively involved with the collection, right? And at that point, I knew nothing. Nothing. Those of you who are just walking into your first meeting, I knew less than you know. No, that's no joke. That's the truth. I hadn't even seen the Karate Kid movie. I didn't know anything about it. Not the first thing. I didn't even know if I liked them. And the first ones I saw were not in the best shape, so I thought, oh, these things are kind of sickly, They should be bumped up into bigger pots. For one thing, why? They got them stuffed in these little pots. They're always cutting on them. No wonder they look so bad. That's not a joke. That's how I was thinking. That's how I came to it. And then, it was given to me as a responsibility. Great, I don't know anything. The plants are not in great shape. And Asheville now has at least some reputation for being a good bonsai reference, a good center for bonsai in the region. But it wasn't back then. The local club was fairly anemic. That's one of those clubs, I've talked to them when they had a half a dozen members. They're doing better now, thank goodness, but they up and down like most organizations do. And at that point, they were not robust. So it was like, okay, here are these strange plants, and I'm supposed to take care of them, and I don't know anything about them. Unfortunately, this is where that fellow Dr. Creech comes in. I got sent out to a variety of places to learn. Right? Great learning opportunities thanks to the Arboretum. Of all of them, and there were some nice ones, the learning period opportunity that I value the most was one weekend I got to spend with Yuji Yoshimura in upstate New York at his house. Now, enough time has passed since Mr. Yoshimura died that perhaps a lot of you don't know who he is. But at one point, he was the main guy in American bonsai, right? And then for a longer period of time, it was him and John Naka, with Yuji kind of being the East Coast guru and John Naka kind of being the West Coast guru, and they both traveled back and forth. But it broke into kind of like camps, right? And Yuji he was born into a bonsai family in Japan. He was the eldest son of a man who was a bonsai professional, a very highly respected bonsai professional in Japan, and he left. He left. He was to inherit the business, they're still very traditional that way. Eldest son, he was going to inherit the family business, and he left to come to America and teach Westerners, including women. Oh, it wasn't funny. He was ostracized. I didn't learn this till later, but that was a shameful thing he did. He left the family business to go teach bonsai to Westerners. Nobody did that. Nobody did that. He did that. He came here, set up shop just north of New York City. Tarrytown was his first place, and then he moved to Briarcliff Manor, which is close by. And from there, that was his home base. He traveled all over the United States, all the way to the West Coast. He was teaching in California before John Naka was, right? And he traveled everywhere and helped establish bonsai clubs and taught countless thousands of people. And as luck had it, fate had it, or whatever, when I went to study with him in January of 1995, I turned out to be his last student. I went there and I heard so many things about him. I was scared. Honest to goodness. He had a reputation, and you can vouch for this, as being somebody who wasn't concerned about your feelings, who had very strong opinions and would, tell you all about them, and was a kind of dictator. He knew and you didn't, so do what I tell you. That was his kind of mentality. And I heard all these things in bits and pieces before I was to go. It came to me like bad vibes on the air, It's like, oh, Yoshimura, good luck with that. And I was really afraid when I went. And
so you did him in.
He was shockingly old when he opened his door. I had actually met him once or twice before, but I saw him in a public venue where he was the great Yoshimura. It was at the World Bonsai Convention in Orlando in 1993, I think that was. And he was the headliner, him and John Naka, right? They were the big cheeses, and some people from Japan. And I, through another involved process I won't describe, I was able to get an invitation from him to come and study with him at his place. And I arrived at the door, and he opens the door, and it's not, the vibrant Mr. Yoshimura in his official kimono from Japan. He would wear a black kimono, and he was on stage, and he wouldn't talk and stuff. He was very strict, colorful, but strict. And instead, this old, bent man opened the door. So feeble looking, I couldn't believe it. And invited me in. And the 3 days I spent studying with him changed everything for me. Everything. And it all had to do with this stuff, right? Because that's what I was there to learn. It was to learn bonsai. I was a young, back then, young person who was given this responsibility and in no way measured up to it. Did not know what I was doing. And he recognized that. I'm sure he recognized that in a matter of moments, right? And I brought along pictures of our trees, and I was shaking when I showed them to him, and he would, that was it. It was grunts. And I thought, oh, this is going to be so bad. It wasn't bad. It was very good. And because in that time we spent together, the conversation went well beyond bonsai, and a lot of very memorable personal moments. But the big thing he gave me in bonsai was this: he was acutely aware of the responsibility of being the curator of a public collection. He said, your responsibility, beyond keeping the trees looking good, keeping the collection alive, your responsibility is to help bonsai find a new audience. You have to figure out a way to make bonsai more interesting to ordinary everyday people. Because you're going to have the opportunity to do that because your collection is public. The trees that you do and work on, they're going to be seen by many, many people. And with that comes a responsibility to try to engage them, to show them bonsai in a way that will have some personal connection for them, to bring more people in. just like your club has to do that, right? You have to always be thinking about bringing new people in so you can keep going, right? Because it gets better the more people you have engaged. And the same way with bonsai, in a larger sense. In order for it to continue progressing, continue being viable, to become something it isn't at present, it has to keep bringing new people in. It has to keep finding new audience. And he said, it was my job to do that. Now, bear in mind, my level of experience. I didn't know how to prune a tree. And he's telling me, well, you have to figure out a way to engage the public. And I kind of thought he was joking, because it seemed completely absurd on the face of it. And he had a wicked kind of sense of humor. He would, like yank your leg, and when it came off and you realized it was a joke, then he would crack a smile. So I thought this was a joke. And I chuckled a little bit. He said, no joke! In my face! Like the way I remembered, he was like jumping over the table at me. I don't think he did, because he wasn't physically capable. But, it stood me up straight. He said, no joke. That's your responsibility. You need to create, and these were his exact words here. I'm not paraphrasing. He said, you need to create the Carolina School of Bonsai. And now I thought, this is completely crazy. I don't even know what he's talking about. I just want to learn how to make portable trees. you have to invent the Carolina School of Bonsai. Okay, I'll do my best. And it kind of, went on from there, our conversation. But that stuck in my head. And partly I was thinking like, yeah, he's losing it, He's been around too long and it's starting to go on him, right? Because he can't seriously think that's something I'm responsible for. Over time,